Now let's get started. How do we tackle this problem? So we know content-aware fill is out of the picture. We're going to be using generative fill. So first of all, as always, we need to make the selection of the right area, which is the area that needs to be filled up, this one, right? So let's make a selection of this. So what we can do here is, first of all, let's use the same approach. We're going to select the good parts first and then just invert the selection. And how we can do that is very easily. One of the good parts we know is going to be this, the body of this woman, okay? And then, of course, the backdrop, we don't want to lose that. That looks pretty good. And here, only this white part that is there, we need this just to be selected, right? So what we can do here is, if we go over to the select menu, here's this very convenient option that says select subject. So that can, because mainly we are interested in this selection of the feet here, like this, okay? So that just does the job with one click. By the way, this is also AI powered, okay? So that, it has got the job done here. Now what we need to do is, we just need to select this whole backdrop, right? So for this, since it's, there's no shape, like it's just pretty definite, we can just go to one of our rectangular marquee tools. Now we need to add to this selection, right? So we can hold down shift and something like this. I don't mind if, actually not this, I'm just going to undo that, because something from here, because I want this entire area that is to be filled up. It should be a part of the selection once we invert this, right? So hold down shift and again, I've made the same mistake. So let me draw it from here. Okay, yeah. So something like this is fine. And just leave it here. And this is the good part that we have selected, that we definitely want to retain before we use generative fill. And we can also do an inverse. You could have actually done this the normal way also, but I just feel this is easier because you just get some automated tools. But for example, you could have used the object selection tool and probably encircled this area and got similar results, okay? Different ways of doing different things. I just find this slightly more intuitive. That's why I show this way, okay? Even though it involves that extra step of inverting the selection. So now this is the area that needs to be filled up. So let's pray and hope that it works, because that's what you have to do with these AI tools. You just don't know what you're going to get. So let's run generative fill on an empty prompt and let's see the results here. All right, so you can see that that looks pretty good. It even maintained the shadow and it has given that nice perspective, that slight curve that we were looking for, okay? Now we've got 3 variations here. Let's just look at this. I think this even has a better look, because if you see, what you have to look out for is this very subtle amount of light that you're seeing right where it's supposed to take a curve. You probably can't even notice it, but it's there. You would be able to probably see that if you used content-aware fill and you got something absolutely kind of equal everywhere with no variation in the lighting, this won't look real. Plus, it won't produce things like shadows on the feet and all these things, okay? So that is why we're using generative fill. Let's also see this, because I think this also looks promising. Yeah, I think this looks really good because we again have this so much of variation in the lighting. Like, look at the difference between the first generation. This is also not bad, because the shadow looks pretty decent. I think this really looks the best out of all the 3, okay? And remember, I told you about always updating Photoshop, okay? One of the new things that has just come while I was making this course now is that when you do get a good result like this, okay, and you feel like, you know, I wish instead of hitting generate and again hoping for the 3 results to come good, can't I tell Photoshop that, you know, just generate something similar, because I like this. So yeah, generate 3 more, but it should be similar to this. Well, that option has come thanks to the update. So if I go here on the little dots, if I click, I have a generate similar option, which if I hit is going to generate 3 similar variations to this. Right now, I don't want to do that just to save time, and also because we already have got a decent result right here, okay? So let me just move this to the side. Now, there's going to be one issue, which is that once I zoom into this shot, okay? Because remember I told you in the last video, anytime you're using a selection around a body part, especially something like feet, it is going to distort it a bit. That's the downside of using generative fill. Gets better with every update, but it still is not perfect. Let me show you. So this is the generative fill layer that we got. If I hide this, just look at the feet, okay? So can you see? Yes, not too much of a difference, but for example, just look at this part of the toe. That's gone. If you look at this part, that's also changed. Now, we are going to obviously correct it, right? Because we are assuming that you do want to take a big printout of this. But just want to mention, before we get to the solution of this, just want to mention again, don't be a perfectionist. Because I do this a lot of times with my clients, okay? If my client has told me small images for social media and I see something like this after one click of using generative fill, I might just send them this. I'm not absolutely joking with you, okay? Now, whether it's unethical, ethical, that's another debate altogether. Because my idea is that I know for sure most of my clients are more worried about the face. None of them are actually going to be zooming right into their feet and noticing that missing toe. Okay, I just know it because they've asked for the small images, so I know how that works. And I will not lose any sleep over giving this image to them. I'm just being very, very honest with you, because with one click, my job gets done. Okay, so sometimes I'm just telling you how, if you are a photographer, how you have to think of things. Okay, but let's assume this is a client and we want to do things absolutely the perfectionist way. They have asked for a big printout for this. We need to correct this, right? So what is the way out of this? Let's see the solution for that. So in order to solve this, what we are basically going to do is something very simple. We simply are going to take the original feet and the legs from the original image, even though we don't need the full leg, but it's okay. But we're basically going to take the legs, entire legs from the original image, put it onto a separate layer and put it on top of this so that the distorted part is hidden. Okay, very simple solution to this. So what we're going to do right now is, first of all, before we do this, let's just stamp everything onto a new layer. Okay, so that again, we don't face those layer issues. I'm going to open up a new layer, use our Control Command Alt Option Shift E shortcut, and let's have everything on this layer. Now what we're going to do is hide this. Okay, this stamped layer, also hide the generative fill layer. We don't need it right now, so that we come back to our original, make sure you hide this is highlighted also. Okay, now it's time to make that selection. So we're going to zoom in, and the best tool to just get the legs here is the object selection tool. So we're going to go to the object selection tool and circle, first of all, this leg here. And that should be fairly easy for Photoshop to detect. All right, so it has done its job. Again, I want this also. So let's, by the way, if this contextual taskbar kind of gets irritating sometimes, it comes again and again in between. You can always go to Window and just hide it for some time, okay? So, and you can enable it later back on. But right now I'm going to hold down Shift to add and just select this also. And hopefully that should do a good job. And now what we're going to do is, once we have these selections, we are going to just put this on a separate layer. Now, how can you do that? Very easy. You don't even have to use your mouse. Just use the shortcut on your keyboard, the usual copy paste. So Control Command C, that's copy. Nothing's happening till now, but Control Command V. And the moment you do that, can you see this thing comes, which is layer 2. The moment you paste something after copying in Photoshop, and there was an active selection, Photoshop's going to pick that part up, put it on its separate layer. And can you see right now it's highlighted? So this is the active layer. If I was to take the move tool, we can see something very scary, which is this. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that. But now we know that, yes, these are the legs. Sometimes when this is the case, I also just like to double click and change the name like legs. Okay, so that later on, in some of the edits, we'll have multiple layers. There'll be more challenges involved. So it'll be a longer edit. And then to search for that exact part, body part, can become tough. So sometimes I just label it also. Okay. But now what we're going to do is we're going to enable everything back. We are now still facing that problem, right? But now we have the legs on a separate layer. What we're going to do is just hold this and drag it on right on top. So now if you see, this looks fine. So if I just hide this, just gets the feedback. But can you just notice something? Just see this. If I zoom in, and this is a common problem, okay? Because if you look at, so first of all, let me tell you what the problem is. Let's see, before, after. Now, again, not too much of a difference. You don't care about it. Job is done. But let's say you really want perfect things to be done, okay? Can you notice a bit of this whitish outline on the legs? Now, why is this coming, okay? If I just hide everything. By the way, the shortcut for that is, if you ever want to just quickly compare a before and after also, it's a great way to do this, is to hold down Alt Option and just hit the first original layer. That what it does is it just basically hides everything else, and it just only makes the eyeball, this layer visible, the bottom one, the base one, okay? So you can see. It's a good way to always see the before and after in Photoshop. Hold down Alt Option, click on the base layer, okay? So if you see the base layer where we took the selection from, the areas around it were slightly white, okay? So it takes just a bit of that. It's a very common problem in Photoshop. That's what you are basically seeing right here. And how this can be corrected very easily is that if you look at this problem, it's actually coming from just this layer, right? This selection that we've made. So you see this, right? Again, because this had that white part around it, so it takes in a bit of a halo-like thing, which is reflecting here. But if you think of it, if we hide this, and remember this was where we stopped after generative fill, right? This looks pretty good here. So here, the only problem is this and this, but the other parts actually look much better, right? So now, what we can do is with this legs layer selected, we only actually just want to use the feet from it, right? So what we can do is we can actually just open up a layer mask here, okay? In fact, what you can do is just double click on the layer mask, invert the layer mask so it turns into a black layer mask. And what does a black layer mask do? Right now it's concealing this layer that we put on top with the original feet and the legs, right? It's completely hiding it. Wherever we paint, it's only going to reveal that, wherever we paint white on the layer mask. And where do we need to reveal? Only on the areas where generative fill did a bad job. So if I take my paintbrush right now, let's go here, to make sure white is selected, let's decrease the brush size, and we can always just quickly compare it with the original just to see where we need to paint. So in this case, first let's work on the right foot, okay? So in this case, which is the distorted part? Only the toe part, okay? So just run our white brush here. That's it. We don't need to worry about, because if I run it here, we are actually getting the problem from the original image, which is not produced by the generative fill image. So let's hide it. Why I need to do that? Okay, just this much is fine. Again, now for the left foot, let's hide this. Let's see where it is actually causing a problem now here, okay? Look at this part near the heel, okay? It is causing a problem. It is slightly different, but the question is, does it matter? No. Who's going to notice this? Not even the person that you have clicked will be able to notice that their heel was like this and it got distorted. So this doesn't count. But this maybe, even though I won't count it, but maybe. Yeah, because that her actual foot looks a bit different, like the toe, okay? So here, again, let's do this. That's it. We really don't need to do anything else. Now, if we compare this with the original, we have been able to maintain her original feet. In this edit, it wasn't that important. Like I said, you could have left it, but in the other edits that are going to come, this is going to be important because sometimes those distortions are pretty bad, okay? To the point it can make you lose your appetite bad, okay? So this is a trick that we will be using again and again quite often in this course, okay? Now, finally, we will also, let's say, take a printout of this. So we need to correct those areas and need to fill in the noise back, okay? So let's stamp everything onto a new layer so that we don't face any issues. Which was the area that was filled by generative fill? We always have that right here. So we can go to the generative fill layer anytime. It's easy to notice because it says generative fill. Hold down Control Command on the layer mask, click. We know this is the area that is not going to have the noise. We can verify this by probably zooming in, or has it done a good job this time? Actually, that is not bad at all. I don't think we need to do our whole filling of the noise thing. And finally, so that sometimes you can get lucky that even after the stretching of the image, it still preserves something similar. And if we were to correct that to make it exactly equal, I think that would be bordering on the perfectionist route. So I'll just leave it right now. But remember, I told you at the start of this video, if we want to maintain that original composition, because we do want this image is anyway like that, right? Pretty nice to have that dreamy negative space because of the pose that she's giving. So we can always now take generative, the crop tool, for example, just make sure generative expand is selected. Maybe I want to even give this much, okay? Now I can hit generate. Now again, after the update, okay, we can actually give a prompt here also in generative expand. So like I told you, I just recently updated Photoshop and this is one of the changes. So with AI tools, the changes come pretty fast. That's why it's always important to keep updating. So if I actually want to generate something else, I can do. So it's kind of working more like generative fill right now. It's an additional option that has been put. We don't want to do that because most of the time these things, when you're trying to just work with something like this, it just works better with the empty prompt. Okay, so I'm just using generative expand. I had disabled this option which says delete crop pixels. I was trying something else. That's why instead of the white area that we usually see when we do this whole cropping thing, you're actually seeing the image. Don't worry about it right now. It's exactly the same thing. It's just that I unchecked this. Okay, so you don't need to do that. Because I keep using Photoshop for a lot of things. So if you uncheck this, instead of the white part, you actually see the original image, okay? But you don't worry about that. It works exactly the same way like it has been working.